Good afternoon, runners, and welcome to United Airlines NYC Half training talks. We are about 2 weeks out from your big race day, and this chat is for you if you are running that race. You guys have been training for the last 8, 9, 10, 11 weeks for this amazing race that's going to take place in March. So sit back and relax. We have an amazing show for you guys with some great panelists that are going to answer all of your training questions, injury questions, you name it. This is the chat to join. So sit back and relax. We have some great guests, like I said. My name is Coach Steve from New York Roadrunners. We also have NYRR Coach Anik joining us as well to answer all of your training questions. We have from New Balance, Tessa. You've seen her on our shows before. We have from our partners at Hospital for Successful Surgery. We have Betty Chow. And then we also have Dr. Shelby Harris, who is a behavior sleep expert, join us to answer all of your night before sleeping questions, because that is a key to training, is make sure you get rested. And that's where all the recovery happens to your training. So guys, thank you so much for joining us. I want to jump to Anik. Thank you for joining us. As a coach, I'm sure you train a lot of athletes on this course. So thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here, Coach Steve. I love this panel that we've got going on right now. This is like a powerhouse panel. So runners, if you're joining in, this is like the panel to ask your questions to. But my name is Coach Anik Lamar, and I'm with the New York Roadrunners, and we work with a lot of athletes who are preparing for the big race at the United NYC Half. And so we're very excited to work with them, and I'm excited to be here today.
Awesome. Thank you, Anik. And Tessa, thank you for joining us. Now, you've joined us a lot of chats before. You told us a little bit ago you're in 70 degrees of weather right now, and I'm over here shivering in the East Coast. We're going to talk about a lot of gear on this chat and how to stay warm and stuff like that. So thank you very much for joining us as well.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm in the South, so I've not experienced the cold in the moment, but it's really nice to always have that in the back pocket. I'm excited to dive into more of the tech of what to wear on race day.
Thank you so much. And Betty from HSS, thank you so much for joining us. A lot of runners right now, they're coming up with last minute injuries or discomforts. They're nervous. So hopefully we can answer all of their questions as well. So thank you, Betty, for joining us.
Yeah, great to be here. Excited to be able to offer you some guidelines to help you get through the next 2 weeks. And I'm a runner myself and very familiar with the New York Roadrunners races. So throw your questions our way.
That's right. Put questions in the chat. And finally, I want to introduce Dr. Shelby Harris. Thank you so much for joining us. You're a behavioral sleep expert. And as coaches always say, that's sleep and resting is where recovery and training really happens. I'm sure we're going to highlight a lot of that on this chat. And thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I love talking running and sleep, two of my favorite things.
Yeah, and I have to point out, Shelby, that to the runners out there might be familiar with you, but more in person, you were the last chat we had before the United Airlines NYC Half was canceled, right before the pandemic started. So it's a full circle with you for joining again. So thank you for spending time with us again and sharing your wealth of knowledge. We have tons of topics. As always, guys, as I said, put your questions in the chat. We're going to take them throughout the show. And also let us know where you're watching from. I see some people already writing right now. So put us where you're watching from. I like to play a game of who's watching from the farthest away. We'll give you a virtual high five if you're watching from very far away, the farthest person away. So thank you so much. I want to jump into this show because, like I said, we have a jam-packed show. We're going to start off with our segment number 1, which is the last weeks of training. As I said, we're 2.5 weeks out. So this weekend is usually about the last long run for those runners. And Anik, I'm going to jump to you first because, as I said, the last long run for a lot of those runners. So how important is this run that they're going to finish up? And kind of what are the main goals of this last long run?
Yeah, so you want to go out and have a good effort, but in moderation. So this run is close enough to the race day that you can get some training boost. You can get a training advantage by doing it well, but you also have to be careful not to go too hard, too fast. So I think folks get really excited during this time and they sometimes produce like a race effort 2 weeks out. And that's really what you're not looking for. You don't want to be pounding the pavement. You do want to get a good training run in. You also don't want to stress. If, for example, you have bad weather where you are, or you're feeling an injury or something has happened to your schedule, this is a run that you can pull back on as well. Don't let perfection be the death of good enough. I think I've completely butchered that quote, but the point is good enough is actually good enough for this long run. And so that's what you want to focus on. Get a good enough effort in, do enough of the distance that's prescribed by your training plan, but be kind to yourself and adapt if necessary. Those are sort of the big themes for this run, Coach Steve.
I like those themes a lot. Now, some runners, though, might not get this last run in. Something comes up. family travel, work comes up, how do we adjust our training, or do we adjust training if we miss our last key long run for the NYC Half?
Yeah, so you can do it on a different day. It doesn't always have to be on the day that you typically train, but you don't want to put it too close to race day itself. So you can cross train, for example, if the weather is bad, you can cross train inside on a bike or a rowing machine or a treadmill. You can be creative, but you don't have to stress about this run. The worst thing you can do is to run when you don't feel well and you have this pressure to cram in the distance. So you feel this sort of sense of like, I need to cross all my T's and dot my I's to have a perfect race. This run, while not optional, you can reduce the effort of it and still have a really great training cycle. So what we see a lot of folks doing in this period is they hammer the run or they try and exhaust themselves. And then they have a 2-week turnaround window. And that 2-week window, we'll talk about it later, but that's more important than that last long run. So it's really about doing what you can with what you have where you are, getting a good enough effort, but not being, sabotaging your whole training plan just for one run.
It's true. Yeah. But this is also the longest run for a lot of runners. And a lot of them, maybe new runners, they haven't ran this distance in their whole life. So how do we mentally prepare the runners for that long journey?
Yeah, it's going to be about recognizing that you're ready. And even if you haven't done the distance, so for some people, their training plan will have them running over a half marathon distance. For others, they might not get up to the half marathon distance, but they need to know that they are ready. Their bodies have done a big bulk of the training. Their bodies have done most of the distance. And those last miles, the excitement of the crowds, especially on this race course, the excitement of the crowds, Times Square, all the energy, it will carry you through the race. And this happens all the time in marathon training as well. Most of us don't run 26.2 to get ready for the marathon race day. So there is a grace window of mileage that if you haven't gone over distance and you haven't done the half marathon, maybe it's your first half marathon and you're training smart and conservatively, but you might be uncomfortable and you might feel a little anxious that can I do it on race day? And the answer is yes. You are physiologically ready to execute if you've done a good training plan, you've done most of your training, you have to trust. This is where trust in yourself is a really big period. So self-talk, working on imagery, seeing yourself being successful in your accomplishments, these are all tools that you can use to close that gap if you feel a little bit less than confident on race day.
That's great. Runners, and as Coach Unique talked, if you have questions about your training, put those in the chat. I want to hear from you guys. I want to jump over to Tessa. Tessa, thank you again for joining us. Now, what should runners consider in terms of the gear during that last long run? Anything they should look back on with the training, what they wore for races? What should we think about as far as gear?
Yeah, as far as gear, this is a really, really great opportunity to test anything out that needs to be tested. We always say on race day, nothing new on race day. So with that in mind, it's always a great opportunity to make sure we've tried out all the different kinds of pieces of apparel we're interested in possibly wearing on race day, and footwear too, for that matter. On this last long run, or if it's not ends up not being that perfect last long run like we just talked about, it's still a great opportunity to get that extra piece of apparel on to make sure it works for us. We want to stay away from cotton. We want to stay with more of the synthetic materials to wick away moisture and keep you dry and cool, and keep you warm as well, especially if it's going to be colder weather. Those moisture wicking materials really help keep your body regulated, especially for that long time. You're out there facing the elements for an extended period of time. So it's really great for us to take the opportunity to test the products, the materials, and make sure it works right for us.
Very good advice. Now, whatever it comes to shoes, is now a good time to look at a pair of shoes? Should we be using what we've used in training? Talk about how we figure out what to wear coming to race day as far as shoes and maybe switching now or not now.
So for footwear, this is the perfect window if you are going to be wearing a different shoe for race day, to test that shoe out, get a run in it, feel confident in it, keep it nice and fresh and springy, but have the confidence built with that footwear. Or it's also a great time to stick with what you know. We want you to feel confident and trust your apparel and your footwear come race day. It's the last thing you should have to worry about. So if you have a race shoe, a carbon plated shoe, and you want to make sure that that's right for you, this would be a really great run to do that on. Make sure it can withstand that distance and you feel comfortable and confident in it. Or if you are going to race in what you've been training in, make sure they're relatively fresher so you feel great. Or make sure you're in a nice, good, happy spot with them. If they're at the end of their life, maybe it's a possibility to get a shoe that is the exact same version and model that you're currently running in, just to give you a little spring in your step. It's always nice to have that new shoe feel, and this would be a perfect time to get them on your feet, get them into that nice little sweet spot we like to have them in, and ready for race day. So this is a really great window right now to lock in your race footwear.
I love talking about shoes. I feel like I can talk about that all day. Runners, as I always say, put those questions. If you have shoe questions or gear questions, put them in the chat. From our great partners, HSS Betty, I want to jump to you because unfortunately, a lot of runners do feel, I see some questions now come in, unfortunately, about, small injuries or discomforts happening now. And I want to obviously get to those. But from overall standpoint, I want to talk about if runners are dealing with some small injuries right now, as a small knee injury or discomfort or Achilles, what do we do now 2 weeks out from the race to best prepare us for the start line?
I think if you have an injury, you're probably best just to take a few days to rest it. But if it's just minor pain, you might want to just make some minor adjustments to your run, whether you just want to go out and not decrease your speed, or maybe throw in a few segments where you walk, maybe avoid hills. So if it's something that it's an injury, then like I said, you want to just hold off on it. The other thing you can try is also just doing some more soft tissue work. For example, just foaming, spending a little more time foaming the area, gentle stretches, and maybe even going for a massage and have a sports massage, and see how you will feel after that. And then just kind of go back into the run. Just test out the waters. Perhaps maybe you want to even just try it on a treadmill just to see if the pain surfaces up.
So if runners are dealing with some sort of injury right now, whether it's small or large, or last long run, like me and Anik were talking about earlier, it's this weekend for a lot of runners. If we're feeling, some injuries, would you advise maybe pushing that long run, either canceling or pushing it back, or kind of pushing through that long run to get the mileage in?
I would say just take it easy and hold off. You can hold off on the raw one. Again, you don't have to do it exactly on the day you plan on doing it, but just give your body in that area a little bit of rest. And also if you look at the area and you may see a little swelling, cold pack just does wonders if you have just some minor swelling, and just kind of calming that area down. But definitely, I would hold off and not push it if you've got an injury going on there.
Really good advice. I like that a lot. We have a lot of unfortunately, some injury questions that I want to toss to you in a few minutes. But I want to definitely bring in Dr. Shelby Harris here, our expert behavior sleep. Thank you once again for joining us. And I want to talk about how sleep affects, how high mileage is affected by your sleep. So, talk about how much runners should be sleeping now, how it affects their running and the race day.
Right. So the majority of people need between 7 and 9 hours of sleep. A lot of times we're not getting close to that. So keep in mind, like I said, it's the majority of people 7 to 9. Try to get what you can as routinely as you can for the weeks leading up to the race, especially now. So it's not just quality or quantity, it's also quality. So make sure that if you're trying to be consistent with your bedtime and wake time, get more sleep, because that's when your bones repair, your muscles are repairing. It's super important to get you to that race line or that start line nice and fresh, with fresh legs, energy, but really work on the quality of it too. So you can have 7-8 hours of sleep routinely, but if you are using a lot of screens at night, or you're drinking alcohol, or you're tossing and turning and you're not relaxing before bed, those are all things, lots of caffeine, there's a million things. Those are all things that are going to definitely impact the quality of your sleep. And as you start to notice that you're doing more mileage, you might actually need to nap more. So if you don't have insomnia at night normally, and you're just more tired, you might need more sleep at night, or you can do a 20-30 minute power nap during the day if you have the time to do it. And that can really be very energizing and help with repair and getting ready for that start line as well.
I love naps. I just can't I can't take naps. I always try. Before kids, I used to do it a lot. Now with kids, for some reason, my body doesn't let me nap. I'll sit there and be like, 20 minutes later, I'm like, I haven't slept yet, but I'm tired. It's interesting. And I just can't get myself nap.
Right. So that's, if some people, I can't nap either. So I just say, try to get a little more sleep at night, because as you will need more of that now. But if you're someone who can nap, by all means, do it right now. Try not to do it past about 2 p.m., but that power nap can really be helpful for energy. Remember, sleep is really repairing your body right now so that you can get to that start line as you need to.
Should we be looking at, you talk about a certain number and hours of sleep or naps, should we be tracking that so we know if we're hitting it with those apps out there galore, whether you watch, whether it's on your phone? How do we know we're getting in? What's the best way to know that for sure?
The trackers are wonderful for people who don't make sleep a priority. So if you're someone who's getting in bed and you're burning the candle at both ends, you're getting in bed too late, you're waking up too early, the trackers will be helpful to let you know, okay, you're only getting 5 hours of sleep at night. But in my opinion, if you're going to start using a tracker now or an app, sometimes they're not always the most accurate. Sometimes some are a little more accurate than others, but not perfect. But the problem is, if now it starts telling you that you're having not enough REM sleep or not enough deep sleep, it actually might make you more anxious about your sleep and make you sleep worse. So really just go by how you feel during the day. Try to make sure you have a window of 7 to 9 hours consistently. And if you feel well rested and refreshed for most of the day, you're doing fine. I don't start using a tracker now if you haven't used one before, to know your baseline.
That's good advice. Yeah. Guys, as I said, a lot of questions, a lot of shout outs. I want to get to them now. So how are the shout outs? We're going to see if we can pull them on screen here. What do we have? We have Jeffrey saying, have a good time, runners. Thank you, Jeffrey. I know all the runners are going to enjoy it out there in March for the half marathon. We also have, coming in here, we have Pamela from California watching. Thank you so much. We have from Houston, Texas, we have Sumayo. And then next we have anyone else? Okay, cool. Let's go over questions. What do we have? Questions coming in here. First one, we have, I'll pull it from the screen. We have Elena, who says, maybe to Dr. Shelby here, we have, my nerves are always shot the night before. What can I do to help me sleep?
All right, that's a really common one. I'm a sleep specialist and I don't sleep well the night before most marathons. So it's totally common. And know that your adrenaline will carry you through in the race. Really, the goal is to focus on getting sleep more so the week before, the 3, 4, 5 nights before that night right before the race. That's the best thing to do. So if you can work on limiting the alcohol, getting consistent, limiting the screens, that's the goal. So even the night before, even if you don't sleep well, that's okay. There are things that you can start practicing now if you want to help. So you could do some meditation routinely. You can listen to audiobooks. Try to stay away from the screens. If there are things that calm your brain and distract you a little bit, that's going to be helpful. But know that that night before, it's totally common not to sleep as well because you're excited. And a lot of times we wake up even earlier because we don't want to miss getting to the start on time. That it's totally fine. If you've got the sleep in your bank the nights before, you will be okay.
It's really great advice. This question is from Pamela. I think it might be a combination of Tessa and Betty for this one. The question is, Pamela says, I'm worried about numb toes. Any recommendations? Tessa, let's jump to you first, maybe from a shoe perspective. Is there a reason that the toes are getting numb out there?
It could honestly be a few things. And right now is the best time to be addressing it, especially you don't want to be nervous about that on race day. A few quick and easy suggestions before having to worry about anything super serious would be, let's look at your footwear. Do you have enough wiggle room in your toe box to begin with? We as runners normally like to have about the thickness of your thumb between your big toe, your biggest toe, and the end of your shoe. And I really do thoroughly follow that guideline, and I've never lost a toenail. So I think that's a pretty good rule of thumb, quite literally, pun intended. But also, let's look at like the footwear that we're wearing. Are we lacing our shoes too tightly? And is that the reason why possibly it's causing some numbness in your feet? That's always something to look for. If that toe box is just a tighter fitting toe box of the shoe, there are different models of shoes that have a roomier toe box. Our 1080 V11 is known to have a very roomy toe box. And so we do suggest that to people who sometimes struggle with getting numbing in their toes. That sometimes helps with that sensation. A little bit roomier space for your feet. And finally, one other suggestion would be looking at your socks as well. Are you wearing extremely thick socks or tight socks? That also could be adding to some circulation problems with your feet. So it's kind of a combination of many things, but hopefully you can kind of do a little soul searching here and figure out and get to the bottom of your problem. I'm so sorry about the numb toes.
Betty, anything else to add from your end?
Yeah, I think if you're having numb toes when you're not running, then you definitely want to see a healthcare provider. But if it's occurring when you're running, yeah, one of the suggestions I would add is about the footwear is you can try pressing different areas of your feet to see if that can replicate the numb toes. And if it does, then maybe that area needs a little bit more padding. So again, something like changing your socks, or even taking some pressure off, maybe just change the style of how you're lacing the shoe can offer some pressure relief on that spot. And that's kind of the other thing. Numb toes can probably occur if there's some kind of stretch or stress on nerves. So, and it doesn't have to be nerves down at your feet. You can just foam roll your calves a little bit more, and even into your thigh, in front and back of your thighs, and then see if that will help.
Really good advice. I like that a lot. Let's stay with you for this next one. Question is, I had runner's knee, kind of knee pain during my training yesterday. What's the best way to overcome this?
Again, many times that runner's knee comes from kind of a soft tissue tightness issue. So definitely foam and stretch. And you may want to invest a little bit more time in the foaming and stretching, and do it both before running and after running. So again, it tends to usually be more of a tension problem, and just kind of relieving the tension can help a lot.
Love it. And then I think what I see, one more injury question coming in here. Courtney asked a question: any tips for hip pain, especially after long runs?
I would say you want to make sure you stretch your hip flexor and your back muscles for that. And also just check if you are having the hip pain because it's a different surface that you're running. Perhaps it's a bit of a bank or an incline, or it's up a hill. If it tends to be on an incline, then one of the things that you can do when you're running a race is run more towards the middle of the road versus the side of the road. If you're feeling it more on inclines going up a hill, or it may be lack of muscular endurance. So perhaps making sure that you do some core work and you're consistent with that from now to the day of the race.
Great. Anik, I want to jump to you. We have some logistical kind of questions here, but also some coaching questions. Maybe you and I can tackle here with the logistics and coaching side of it. Richard has a question. Can you please explain how the wave start will work, including when all runners in all waves need to be in their corrals?
Yeah, so with a larger race, like a New York Road or Run race, we have thousands of people participating. And the wave start is going to feel different than maybe a local 5K race you participated in, where there's just one start time, like for example, 9:30 in the morning, and everyone will just line up in a very long row. Now, with thousands of people, we want to make sure everyone is spaced out throughout the course, everyone's safe, and everyone has a really great race experience. So it's done so the runner has an optimal performance. So you don't have to wait for thousands of people. And so you're going to get communications. These emails from New York Road Runners are super vital to understanding when your wave start is going to go off. And that is when your time will start and you will start running. And it's going to be different. There's multiple wave starts. There's different names or colors traditionally associated with these wave starts. And you're just going to want to make sure you're in the corral ahead of the start. You're comfortable, and you're confident, and you're not running late. It's almost the race before the race is what we tell runners to avoid, which is when you're sprinting to get into their corral. And do not worry on race day. There's tons of signage. There's tons of New York Road Runner staffers who are directing runners. So follow the flow of runners, we say, and then look for your area and your designation, and all your information that you're sent will tell you exactly where to go, what wave to be in, when it will go off, and when you should be in the corral. So personalized information for every single person. Don't want to say exactly what yours would be, but read the communications, and don't hesitate to ask anyone on race day, any of the staffers. We love to help out. So don't hesitate to ask us as well.
That's right. We have some questions here, a lot of logistics. I'll jump into the next one. Kristen asks, what is the best way to get to the start line and how early should we get there? The best way is just take the MTA New York City subway. It is the best and usually the cheapest way to get there as well. Thousands and thousands of runners will be going the same way you are. So basically hop on this train towards Brooklyn and you'll be getting on with a lot of trains. If you go to our website, NYRR.org, you go to the specific United Airlines NYC Half race, you will see a start map about what subways are best to get there. We also saw a question here about which subway to take. There's no bag check, there's bag check entrance, no bag. So once again, that map will kind of show you where to go. If you're checking a bag, the best trains to get off are in the east side of the park, which is the Q or S train. Those are just the closest to bag check. And if you're not checking your bag, you can take the F or the G train, and those are just going to get you to the start line quicker if you're not checking your bag. So check out the website for all the transportation. You can take a car, a taxi, cab, Uber, that kind of stuff to the start line as well. It'll have specific drop-offs as well for you. But as I said, traffic might be busy, roads might be closed here and there. So subway, if you can, is the best way to get to the start line. And we will be emailing out what time to get there. It's going to depend on what your wave time is, but there'll be specific emails like Anik mentioned. If you're in a certain wave 2, it'll tell you what time you need to get there if you're checking a bag, and if you're not checking a bag. Also add time for bathrooms and stuff like that. So all that will be emailed to you closer to the race. Tessa, let's jump to you. I have a question from Billy. Billy asked, how cold is the weather March 20th in New York City? It's in the mid 30s to 40s. Do I need to wear a big jacket while waiting to start? So kind of talk about how to dress before the start of the race, Tessa.
So for the start of the race, it is cold because you're standing around, and it's always best to err on the side of caution and overdress. The nice thing about New York Roadrunners, all of their races, is you can wear a bunch of layers and then you get to peel them off and donate them. And you guys do the Salvation Army still, am I correct, Steve?
Goodwill, yeah.
Goodwill, excuse me. Goes to Goodwill, which is amazing. So it's a great cause. It's a great opportunity for you to clean out the closet, maybe get rid of some old sweats and sweatshirts if you have them, or an old jacket. But I would definitely recommend layering up at that start line and in your corral, and then waiting to peel a layer off. Once you get in your corral, you can peel a layer off. Maybe get those sweatpants off over your shoes, because that's probably the hardest. I always kind of keep a jacket-esque layer as my last layer, because you can easily take that off at the very last minute and put it to the side of the course. So there's a lot of opportunities for you to be nice and warm, and then slowly peel layer off by layer. And even once you get started, you can keep a layer on, the first mile until you're warmed up and running. So, and then peel it off and throw it to the side of the road. They'll still have people collecting all the goodies that runners leave behind. So there's a few opportunities for you to make those decisions and how you want to dress that day.
Really good advice. I like it. And let's go to Dr. Shelby. You have a question from Steven. Great name, by the way. His question says, on race day, I'll be waking up at 4 to 4:30 a.m. versus my usual 6 a.m. wake up. How do I manage this so I get enough sleep race night?
Like I said earlier, it will carry you through if you haven't gotten as much sleep. But if you really want to work on trying to get up a little earlier, maybe the week before, I'd consider slowly advancing your wake time 15 minutes earlier every day or every other day, so that you go to bed 15 minutes earlier and you wake up 15 minutes earlier, so that you might get closer to, say, a 5:30 wake time, so it won't be as drastic as a shift. Making those 15-minute changes is a lot easier to kind of shift your sleep-wake schedule than a drastic, I'm going to go to bed 2 hours earlier and force myself to try and get sleepy.
Really good. I like that. We're going to jump into one more question, which is going to lead us into our next session. Anik, this question's for you. Jonathan asked, could you talk more about the 2-week taper window? Is it just tradition? It seems like a long time to go between long runs and race. I'm new to racing. So new runner here, how do you talk about taper?
I love this, Jonathan. This is like the question. So the taper is not just like a folklore thing. It has a physiological benefit to you the runner. And research shows that if you do a taper successfully, there's a 3% performance improvement that you can get after, at race day. So you can improve by 3% by doing nothing. It is like the best bang for your buck. And what runners have a hard time with is the psychological disconnect here, because the training plan says we want you to work hard for weeks on end, and then stop working hard. And so for many runners, it feels like a moment where they have to completely do a 180 on what they've been told to do for weeks and weeks and weeks. But the point is that 2-week period, it varies plan to plan. Some coaches prefer a shorter period. Some coaches will go 2.5 weeks for the length of training involved. There's a lot of variables, but for what your plan says, trust the taper. It is when your muscles repair. If you think about your body as sort of a well of energy, and you have really dipped into that well with training. You're looking for muscle adaptation. Your muscles have micro tears. Your systems are all sort of suppressed. This 2-week taper period is when your body gets to repair itself all the way to the top. So you go to race day with a full well of energy. There's so many physiological factors that happen in your body, but basically you go with a full tank, a full well. And so it's really important to trust the taper. This is not to say you shouldn't run at all. You can have light runs, easy runs, really stick to the plan and reduce effort, both intensity and distance. But there's a real advantage to nailing the taper. So I love that question. It's science. It helps us. So that's why we say it. Coach Steve, trust the taper.
Trust it. Anik, I feel like I hear that all the time in my head when I'm on runs or something like that. Just your voice, trust the taper, trust the taper. And as we come up to this race, I'm running the race. I'll be tapering, in 4 days or something like that. I'll hear Anik's voice, trust the taper, trust the taper. Anik, as we said, you're not running as much during that taper period. What else can we do with our time? We don't want to occupy that with other substances or other situations, I feel, to not tempt us to run outside. So what should we do during this taper period of not running?
I love Dr. Shelby. We've got a little side chat. Dr. Shelby's advocating for sleep, and I would say yes, absolutely. Dr. Shelby, my favorite quote is "Sleep is a weapon," which is Robert Ludlum, the author, talks about how sleep is a weapon in his spy novels. I always think that. So yes, you can sleep during this time. You can relax. There's a psychological challenge here because all of a sudden your body is used to being exhausted to a certain degree based on your challenging training. And so you might find yourself with more energy. And the thing that you have to do here is not go and expend that energy someplace else. You really have to think about finding relaxing activities. Are you going for easy runs? Are you doing gentle walks? What sort of hobbies, like we call them taper hobbies. What taper hobbies can you pick up that will keep you distracted, but won't deplete your energy stores and won't be working against you? So you want to think about relaxing activities that will keep you psychologically chill, will allow you to take your foot off the pedal, all for the benefit of how you perform on race day. So everyone has different ones. I'm like a big crossword fan during this time, only crosswords during taper periods. Rest of the year I ignore them. But if I'm in a taper period, I need to do something between, when I'm usually running, just to kill time. So I don't think that I have to go sneak in a Zumba class or go for, I don't know, like a 5-mile walk or something detrimental to my running. So you have to think about what works for you.
That's really good advice. Tessa, let's jump over to you. So we talked about staying warm. This race is obviously in East Coast in March. It's pretty chilly out there most years. But we talked about before a little bit, staying warm in the crowd, but after the race, we want to stay warm too, because we just finished 13 miles, our sweat's going to get cold. Runners can check a bag at the start line and bring that bag to the finish and have that bag moved to the finish line with the partners at UPS. So what should we pack in that bag to stay warm? We also talk about no cotton when running, but is there something we should stay warm at the finish line?
So when we're thinking about the bag, how much we can store in there, you only have so much space. You can't pack a whole parka in there, unfortunately, but being really thoughtful about what you are putting in there. So the game plan should be you finish your race, really excited, really happy, congratulations. And you want to try to get as many of those sweaty layers off of your body. So if you can peel a shirt or two and then get a dry layer on your body, that's really going to help you, because hopefully what that garment has done for you, it has pulled the moisture away from your body and absorbed it and kept it off of your skin, so it's done a really great job of serving that purpose for you. But it does eventually meet that max capacity, so it's probably pretty damp. So the idea is to hopefully get that wetter, damper layer off your body, get some dry layers on, and that should definitely really help make you feel warm again. When we're thinking about layers here, we can look into some heat grid technology. Everybody has like a heat thermal layer, something to retain your body heat. We can even get into the nitty-gritty of when you think about jackets that reflect your heat back into you. They're really thin, but they do a great job of reflecting that biothermal heat back inwards. And that's a great time too to also put something like that on, because you're producing a ton of heat. You just burned a lot of calories. You're really warm from your run. So the quicker you can get those damp layers off, throw something on that reflects that heat back inwards to you, that's going to be to help self-regulate that heat temperature. And that's going to be doing really great until you can get back to your hotel or to your safe spot with some friends and family to hopefully get some more layers on and get, dried off.
No, I love that advice. I think afterwards I struggle with. And one other thing I struggle with, Tessa, maybe you can help me and many runners out there, improperly dressing for the race you're going to race. So I've sometimes overdressed during my runs and races specifically because it's 20 degrees out and so just like it's 20 degrees, but then I'm overheating by mile 4. What's the best way to prevent that? And then maybe if we do it, is there a way to adjust when you're out there if you did overdress, unfortunately, so you can have a better later mileage in your race instead of just overheating and dreading it?
I think we all have had a race once or twice in our lifetime where we've over or underdressed, and we've learned a lot from them. So this is always a great learning experience. It's always nice to reflect upon your training. If you have a Strava or a system that tracks your running, sometimes that keeps track of the temperature, or it's something for you to do in the future in your note taking and keeping, is kind of looking back on a day that has similar weather system that's happening on race day. And you can kind of look back and think about what you wore on that day and if you felt good. Race day always has that little bit of a caveat to it because you are running your full effort. You're doing a little bit more than you've ever done. So there's always a little bit of wiggle room. But some key pieces of apparel to think about when you are getting on the towing the line. Sometimes a jacket is really nice. That's a packable jacket or something that you can tie around your waist or stow away in a body waist belt or anything like that. There's so many different pieces of technology now that different brands offer that really does give you a lot of versatility and options. If anything, think about a half zip, something with a zipper feature that helps you kind of dictate how much skin or how much exposure you want to the elements. It's an easy way to kind of do a little adjustment of how warm or how cold you're feeling without having to make you shed a full entire layer. So some little things to be fine tweaking with, but it's really, you've done the training, so you kind of have a pretty good idea of what has worked thus far. So it's always nice to reflect upon what you've done in the past.
I love that. Great advice. We had a question just come in from Amy, and it was a very nice segment for you, Betty, about post-race. What do we do after this race? How do we get back into running safely? And so maybe we can talk about that for a second. Amy asked, can you talk a little bit about what we should do post-race, stretching, eating, staying off feed? The first time, right when you finish the race, are there things we should be doing to actively recover so maybe it's injury-free longer?
Oh, sorry. I would suggest that post-race, kind of immediately after the race, it's just do some gentle stretching and just kind of keep the body moving, but in a very gentle way, nothing aggressive. If you find that you're very sore, you can try using a cold pack with that. And then just a day or two after the race, I would advocate just doing something light, maybe an easy bike ride or an easy walk. So just don't completely stop. And people always ask, well, when can I go back to running after a race? So usually your body will recover with muscle soreness by 72 hours. And I usually just say, by at least the third day, you can go out and go for an easy run. But I usually tell people you don't want to completely stay off your feet. You use, again, something, usually a easy stationary bike ride it's a good thing to get back into after the race.
a lot of new runners might be running on March 20th, and they'll finish the race and they're unsure if what they experienced is an injury that they had or just sore legs, they're tired. How do we know the difference from a brand new runner standpoint after the race? Should I see a physical therapist about this, or is it just soreness from the hard race I just did?
Yeah, I think if you're sore beyond 3 days, 72 hours, I think they could potentially be an injury, maybe just a little bit of inflammation. And at that point, if it doesn't go away after 3 days, I would see a healthcare provider. Yeah, I kind of give that window of 72 hours to see if it's just muscle soreness. That's what you're experiencing.
I love that. Hopefully runners aren't going to experience anything afterwards. They're going to finish with a smile and enjoy that medal. Dr. Shelby, I want to jump to you about sleep. We have one or two questions about sleep, but I first want to talk about what it looks like, the final days before the race. We talk about, carb loading. Is there a similar thing to sleep? Is there more sleep those Thursday, Friday, Saturday going into the race, or does it look the same going into the race night?
Well, it's great that you brought up carb loading, because we actually have found in research that if you make sure, like we were saying, the night before, there's going to be anxiety for a lot of people. But if you try to bank up as much sleep as you can the week going into your race, it actually helps with glycogen stores. So the more sleep you get, the more benefit you actually get out of the carbo loading that you're doing. So it's great in that aspect. And I think, leading up, if you can just work on, it's like the quality or the quantity, but it's also the quality. So really work on doing some relaxation, winding down properly before bed, getting it so your brain's in a good space to be able to fall asleep, limiting the alcohol, limiting a lot of caffeine within 8 hours of bed, taking that extra nap if you can. And it's really getting as much sleep banked up so that when you get to the night before, it's not going to have as much of an impact.
What about after the race? How does that affect recovery? Does it should we kind of say this, the longer, more sleep, I guess, after the race to help that recovery after a hard race, or after the race does not matter as much as before?
No, I actually think even with any hard workouts that you're doing, a hard workout, the sleep after that hard workout is really what's important to help with repairing your muscles and your bones from that hard workout. So even though you're focusing on sleep beforehand, really try to prioritize sleep for the week after the race. That's super important. Now, it's hard for some people. I know myself, it's hard to sleep the night after a race. There's still a lot of adrenaline going. Sometimes you're having muscle cramps. There are things that you need to focus on. So focus on hydration. Focus on the nutrition if you can. Sometimes you're going to some people get involved in celebratory meals, heavy meals, alcohol the night after the race. So know that still might mess up your sleep. And then the week after, if you can, I work on trying to get a nap. And if it doesn't impact your sleep at night, getting more sleep as possible, because it will help with recovery. Compression. I wear compression socks. Some people do compression boots to help if you tend to have some leg cramps or any of some soreness at night. And the more sleep that you get routinely, it actually, during deep sleep, it releases prolactin. And prolactin is anti-inflammatory, and it helps with those aches and pains that you might be having. So really try to prioritize sleep in that week after the race.
I love the sleep, and I like prioritizing it, which is really good. Just can't nap, but I love the sleep.
Good.
A question that didn't come in, it hasn't come in yet, but I know we had it on our last United Airlines NYC Half chat about sleep, and I think it's an important question. A lot of people, and myself in this, do get up middle of nights to the bathroom, or a kid wakes up, this short spurts of maybe 5 minutes. Does that affect our sleep? Does that give us less sleep than maybe a full 8 hours, or does little nighttime wake ups affect our sleep in a negative way?
Great question. So it's normal. Everyone wakes up 5 to 7 times a night and just doesn't realize it. Every time you have a sleep cycle that goes from light sleep to deep sleep to REM sleep, you actually awaken. So we just mostly have amnesia for it. So if you wake up once or twice because you have to use the bathroom or you have a kid come in, that's fine. It's really, you're losing large bubbles in the middle of the night, you're awake for 45 minutes, an hour, and it's happening repeatedly, that's going to be more problematic. Or if you find you're having 10, 15 awakenings, that's something you should definitely mention to your doctor. And really think about how you feel during the day. So don't judge how you feel right when you get up in the morning. Give yourself about 45 minutes to an hour. If you feel well rested and refreshed for most of the day, you're probably fine at night.
I love that. Good advice. I'm glad my kid waking up is not causing me to have any issues because I'm with it during the day. So that's good to hear. Let's go to we have some really good questions I want to jump into because as I said, this chat is always about the runners and what's interesting to you guys. So let's go to Dana has a question. We're going to toss this over to Betty from HSS. I have a hamstring sprain. I haven't run in a week. Been strength training and doing physical therapy. If I feel up to it, should try to get a few miles in here and there in the next coming weeks. Or stick to cross training up to race day?
I would suggest kind of testing out the waters a bit. Go easy and see how it feels. Again, you may just want to throw in some run walk cycles just to see how it handles just kind of the impact on pavement. And if that doesn't work, then just the cross training. But I would just try to test the waters a bit and see if your strength training and the physical therapy treatments have helped it and get you back on the running routine again.
Love it. Anik, we have some questions about the elevation and the course itself. Can talk about, where the elevation gains on the course, how to best prepare maybe in this last long run, other things they can do to prepare for the elevation changes on this course.
Yeah, if you are in New York City, go run a bridge. Go feel really comfortable running over a couple bridges. New York City, I think people perceive that it is flat, but because of our roadways and some of the inclines in Brooklyn, there's actually long, slow climbs in this course. Nothing wildly dramatic, nothing that's going to, like, not a heartbreak hill in Boston type hill. Nothing's named. A hill's bad when it gets named. Nothing to that degree. There's no named hills on this course, but there are bridges, and the bridges are built for cars. And so we know cars need long, slow inclines, and that's what you have on this course. So there are parts of the course where it is going to feel a little rolling, especially in the beginning of the course. And you just want to feel a little comfortable with that. Now, we do have an elevation chart on the website, and you can see exactly how much climbing is involved. And on the flip side, the nice thing about bridges, what goes up must come down, is you do get some free speed coming down bridges as well. So just feel comfortable with the course, really know a course map. That's probably the best thing I can say. So know when slight inclines are going to be happening. But they are mild. So for example, when you're climbing up through Times Square, there's a very mild increase there. The bright lights, the big energy, there's a kids run happening at the same time. That's going to distract you. I really wouldn't worry about it. But if you can, throw a hill in your long run so you have that emotional confidence that you can crush it on race day.
Anik, we talked about it a little bit before. We have a good question from Barbara. I kind of want to toss to you. It's about the last long run. She has a head cold right now, and she's looking to the last long run Saturday. But if not, when is the latest we should be pushing our last long runs? It could be a head cold like Barbara has, or it could be a family obligation or whatever it may be. And if we're injured, hopefully, when our injury is healed, when can we push it back that won't negatively affect our race or end taper period?
Yeah, I love this question. I mean, you could look into Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. So I would say the days after, right? So you're thinking about 3 or 4 days after, and if you can do a good quality effort within that period, fantastic. If you find that you can only do 70% of your prescribed mileage, also fantastic. So especially if you are recovering from a cold, or you even just feel run down, maybe you didn't get your sleep. There is a tipping point where you really just there's no acing the long run. There's doing enough to get your fitness in, to get the muscle adaptation, to feel, to get the training benefit. But there is a point where if you have to do a true, really long distance and you're feeling terrible for the last 5 miles, we call those junk miles. They have no added value physiologically. They are depleting your system. They're suppressing your immune system. You're going to feel bad and beat up by them. So you want to think about pushing your long run off a couple days, not a week, just a couple days, see if you can get it in, and really listening to your body. And when you hit that tipping point and you're going, this is just a junk mile, cut the run, head home, recover, eat a lot of good food right after your run, start that muscle repair, get some good sleep, and take care of yourself. So I'd say you have a couple day window, but it's all about being kind to yourself in that couple day window so you get a good training adaptation and not a negative training adaptation.
Really good advice. Shelby, let's go to you. Have a question says, next year I'll be doing this race. Maybe this question can apply to someone doing it this year as well. How long before the race should I arrive in New York to adapt? This runner is to be 4 to 5 hour time difference coming from Portugal. So maybe talk about sleeping and time zone coming to East Coast and what that looks like for them.
So the best advice I have, it's always hard to give time zone adjustment advice because everyone's coming from different areas. But there is a wonderful app that's called Time Shifter. And if you go to that app, you can put in your time zone, where you're traveling to, and it will give you a plan using light, using sometimes, I don't always recommend melatonin, but it sometimes will use it, light, food, when you should be going to bed. And you can actually, for usually about 3 to 5 days before, you can start actually adjusting your sleep-wake schedule and your eating schedule so that you can get, and light schedule, so that when you land and you adjust, it will be a lot easier than just kind of coming and then expecting to run a race. But if you're coming from Portugal, I would give yourself a day or two, but you're probably going to wake up a lot earlier because your brain's thinking that it's later in the day. I don't remember the exact time change, but it's probably a lot easier than someone who's coming from, say, the West Coast and coming out here and is struggling.
Yeah. This next question from Amber is kind of maybe a Nick and Betty, kind of take it both sides, but we'll start with you, Betty. Amber says, I have Morton's neuroma and have been taking 2 weeks off from running. My longest run has been 7 miles. When should I do my longest run before the race, and how far should I go? So maybe Betty, can I talk about the injury and what they should expect in the last long run?
Yeah, and again, I would just make sure you have good footwear for this. It's kind of like where you had talked about earlier, that you want proper footwear, not too much compression around the foot area there. And it's good you've taken some time off running. And I think if you are going to do your long run, if you can stick to schedule, that's great. If not, again, I would maybe just push it back 2-3 days later for the long run and try it out.
And any kind of, to your, we kind of talked about a little bit before about pushing it back. You said still kind of that Monday, Tuesday, maybe Wednesday, assuming they're healthy.
Yeah, push it back. I love the idea of like going for the trial run, trying a walk run, right? So getting into the run, you shouldn't be going so far above 7. So if these 2 weeks have thrown you off and now your plan's telling you to do 15, I would expectation set. And I would say 15 might not be available to you after 2 weeks off of training. You're going to be fine from an aerobic standpoint. You are not detrained in any grand way during that time. You'll actually be fine. But what you don't want to do is you don't want to have all of a sudden a spike, especially after a 2 week off period, in high mileage. So if your long run, for example, was 8 or 9, maybe even 10, you can start your run. You can throw in some walk breaks in there. A 1 minute walk break has never hurt anyone, and it's still super effective. So if you're finding that you're breathing really heavy and you're sort of exhausting yourself, put a walk break in every mile. Do a mile, do a walk break for those last couple miles, and it gives you a moment to reset. So you don't have to feel like you have to execute your training exactly as prescribed. These training plans are written in pencil. They're not written in stone. They're there to serve you. You do not serve your training plan. And we need runners to understand that. So adapt your plan, especially with a 2 week break, especially try to come back, making sure you're injury free. Adapt your training plan to serve your needs, and know on race day that you've done enough mileage that you can get to the finish line. And you'll be just fine with that distance that you've covered. The energy, enthusiasm, excitement will carry you. And if you need to, like a long run, like race day, you can always throw a walk break in there. I cannot stress this enough. They're fantastic for resetting. If you feel exhausted, they're fantastic for resetting if you feel psychologically overwhelmed. So the walk break is always your friend, and runners should have that in their runner's toolbox.
We have a few more questions left, guys. One from Mary, which I'll take. Mary asks, where can we find the course map? Mary, just go to NYRR.org, and then on the right-hand side, you're going to see all of our races. You look for United Airlines NYC Half at the bottom of the March calendar. Click on that race, and there's a race map with the elevation chart. You also see a map of the start and finish, just because those zoom in a little bit more about baggage and where you exit the finish line. So you can find all that there. And like I said, elevation map is there too, which Nick was talking about earlier. And then Luke asked the question, first NYRR race, where do I pick up my race material? So all runners are going to be going to the experience, the NYRR experience, which is we have a new location this year. So if you've done this race in the past, it has changed. It's called Center 415, I believe it is. Look on our website. It has the address. I think it's like 37th and 38th Street on the east side, but look at the exact location. That is where you can pick up all your stuff. You can have a friend or family member pick up your stuff for you this year. It's called proxy pickup. Just make sure you bring all the necessary materials like vaccination cards, IDs, anything that's on the website. Make sure you have that for yourself and also for your friend. You'll need that as well. And then there was one question I want to toss to Anik, if I can find it. Here we go. Anik, last question of the day, unless anything comes in. Anik, let's toss to you. Amy says, information that you can provide about cheering. Friends and family out there, where can they cheer? The best place to cheer, because we're not training for this race by ourselves. We have friends and family out there. Where can they cheer for their runner?
Yeah, I love this question. I love support groups, and having a smart support group and giving them the right proper information is like essential to this. Now, we are telling you to go to the website a lot right now, and the website has a short queue. I just clicked on, and it took me about a minute to get through the queue line. It's because we have a lot of people signing up for our spring races today. So if you find yourself in a short hold window, do not worry, you'll be fine. You can always come back to the website. But the best friend you're going to have is the race map. Especially if you're a native New Yorker, you can help out-of-towners navigate this map for you. The start is a very crowded place. The finish is a very crowded place, but those middle miles are the best for viewing. There's going to be parts where there's going to be a lot of, it's not like 5 people deep in the middle miles of the course. You do want to be aware and help your support crew know that there's certain times that you're on a highway or a bridge and your support crew cannot be on that highway and cannot be on that bridge. So you're going to look for places that are less popular, less tourist attractions. Times Square is a hard place. It can be busy and crowded in Times Square, which is fun, and it's Times Square. But you're going to try and find other places where you're going to be running and you will need some energy and you will need some support. So check out the race course and look for places that are not hills or highways, are places that are not major tourist attractions, and are near subway lines. And the best thing you can do is to see what subway lines connect. Are you near a subway line in Brooklyn? And you can tell your family and friends to start out there and then take the subway line to a different place in Manhattan. And so it is going to be a little bit of like building their course map to complement your course map, but it's about becoming an expert as well. So good luck with that. That's always the best part, when you find your runner when there's no one around and you can cheer for them really loudly and you can see how it perks up their whole attitude. So that's what I would recommend, Coach Steve.
Love it. Really good advice. And like Anik said, check out our race website for all that information. And runners, you will be getting a special email about times, waves, corrals, all that fun jazz in the coming weeks. But that concludes our chat. Thank you to all the panelists for joining us today. This was really cool to see everyone. And I can't wait to see all of the runners at the United Airlines NYC Half experience coming up March 17th, 18th, 19th. Come say hi to us at the Running Lab Pacer booth area. But we cannot wait to see you at the finish line as well in Central Park. So thank you guys so very much for joining, and we'll see you next time.